G'day and welcome to the Off-Chain Podcast. Don here with you. Our guest today is Matthijs de Vries, founder and CEO of Nuklai, the innovative L1 infrastructure for collaborative data ecosystems. If you don't know what that means, we're going to find out in today's episode. Matthijs is also the founder and CTO of Nexera Foundation, formerly known as AllianceBlock, big players in Web3 infrastructure for the last couple of years. Probably heard of them. Matthijs is passionate about data, Web3 and entrepreneurship, and that'll come all the way through this chat. We're really pumped to talk to him about Nuklai, his latest project, and how data collaboration enables businesses to use AI to build, deploy, and create models and business insights using their data. Again, if you're not excited about that, it's just because you don't understand the potential. So let's dive in with this chat with Matthijs about Nuklai. What's your origin story and why Web3?
Yeah, so actually it all started when I was around 11 or 12 years old. So I'm 39 now, which is a very scary age to say out loud now that I'm almost 40, which is very scary. But when I was 11 or 12 years old, something around that age, I started to dabble with software development. And around 15 years old, 16 years old, I started to do that professionally, meaning that I received money for my efforts in development. And I remember when I was 16, I was on the job. I was developing software for a laboratory, and I was still learning at the time. So I kind of bluffed my way into this, like I know everything and I can do this whole project by myself. And on the job, I was having this book, like how to do this, how to develop. So it was still amazing, but that's also kind of my mentality throughout my career. I was always like trying to find the difficult things that I couldn't really do, but I say yes to them anyway. Like I would do them. I love to have challenges. So this is why also throughout my career as a software developer, I was always active in a lot of different industries, like from this laboratory to education, automotive, government, anything I could get my hands on, anything new I was trying out, many different technologies. And at some point, because I've seen so many different teams and cultures and technologies and etc., I wanted to really settle somewhere. So I started working for a large enterprise in the Netherlands. And there I was responsible for first the team of software developers, then a department and a couple of departments over different locations in the Netherlands. And it was really cool. Over a period of 9 years, I managed to grow a lot as a person, as in my career. And it was nice because I had a decent salary, but I felt like I wasn't really part of something significant. I was just like a cog of something really big because it was really big enterprise, right? And I always found myself interested in doing everything. I always felt responsible for everything that's going on. And if you work at such a large company, you cannot do everything. You can only do this like really narrow thing and do this really well. So after 9 years doing that work, I decided that I had to work for a startup. That sounds like something that fits me. And I was right. I joined like a small startup, 40, 50 people, and I was responsible for business development, sales, project management. I was a product owner. I did some development on the side. Like I was everywhere. And I loved it because I felt like I owned everything that was going on at this startup, which is something that I was really, really hungry for, And there was some point in 2016 when one of the potential clients I was speaking to, they were talking about what kind of properties do they want to have in the project that we were discussing, and suddenly they came up with, we want blockchain, something with smart contracts, and I was like, I know blockchain. I know Bitcoin, but that's like kind of where my knowledge stopped. So I was looking into what they were talking about. I stranded on Ethereum. I started to read about smart contracts and what it really means. And suddenly I was like, wow, this is incredible. So I came up with a plan for them. They didn't go for it, but I was hooked on blockchain technology. So I started to get kind of obsessed with everything in the blockchain industry. I started to become part of community, started to read more, ask questions, meet people. And then in 2017, I started to also put some of my own money into it. So I started to buy tokens. Then I started to participate in ICOs. And at the peak of 2017, I met, a lot of people, a lot of really excited communities. And in 2018, I wrote it all down to, much smaller amounts together with the rest of the like most people did. And that taught me a lot of lessons. First of all, it taught me that a lot of projects raised a lot of funds really quickly, and usually that funds is managed by inexperienced people, and essentially, they throw away a lot of that money for nothing to show for. And it also told me that community is extremely important for project success, and there is a big transparency. Protocols are very hard to use, and stuff like that. And at that point, I read also the right person, and we had the same kind of ideas, like things that we've been seeing going wrong, with ICO boom and then the downfall of the ICOs, and the same kind of opportunities in the industry. And we really aligned on this. And then together we were like, okay, you know what? We should just do something together in order to combat everything that's wrong in Web3 and help make it better. And that's how, from nowhere, suddenly I started to dabble with Web3 and decided that I should be a founder there.
All right, man. So 2016, that's pretty early to be thinking about smart contracts and the birth of Ethereum really at that stage as well. I'm wondering, if you cast your mind back those almost 30 years ago, what kinds of coding were you doing at 11, through to 15 when you started getting paid for it?
Actually, I was making chatbots, but like really, really not intelligent chatbots, and they were mainly developed for like this open chat rooms where you had groups of people that come together and chat in like these public rooms all together. And then this chatbot, it triggered like spam messages based on, I know it's spam now, but back then I thought it was like really funny because, I was literally a dumb teenager. But it was flooding the chats with like ASCII generated art, things like this, based on, words that people said, which was fun to do. And it was done in Java, I believe. And then later on, I created some simple software in Visual Basic with some Windows application UI components and stuff like that, just to make things for me personally easier to manage on my computer, like file management or stuff like that. Just very basic stuff, which got more complicated as time went on, of course.
And what was it when you started looking for your client, that client who kind of opened the door to blockchain for you? What is it that you saw in blockchain or cryptocurrencies that actually kind of captured your imagination or attention?
I think how smart contracts were explained to me is what really helped blockchain click for me. Because back when I heard about Bitcoin, which I think was like somewhere between 2011 and 2013, it never really clicked for me. I was like, the nerd in me was like, yeah, this is cool technology, super exciting. And then the same person in me was like, no use case, no one will use it. What was even, online currency? Like I could kind of wrap my head around it, but I couldn't imagine that the rest of the world would wrap their heads around it. So it's like, it doesn't have much merit to work. And, I just don't understand it. Mm-hmm. And then when I read about smart contracts, what it really means, like to be able to do something together, to agree on something with someone that you don't have to trust, it's really big. It's something that normally we need a notary for, right? If we buy a house and we have to buy that house from other people, you either have to really deeply trust those people or you have to trust the notary. Like there's not really any other way. And notaries are working well, but they're not flawless. And I think a smart contract, it will taking the human aspect out of it, making it more more perfect, more safe, and ensuring that even though you're doing business with someone that might be an absolute top fraudster, what's in the smart contract is law, right? That's what will happen. So it doesn't really matter what you're dealing with, and that's something that's really, really cool to me.
How did you go from that to your first blockchain startup in AllianceBlock?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So as I mentioned, I rode ICO boom all the way up and back all the way down, like many other people did in 2017, 2018. And what, like I said, there was so many problems with the projects out there, with raising too much funds, have a lack of transparency. We saw the importance of community, the power of community, and the underutilization of that, but also the lack of security, how hard it is to use certain platforms and technologies. Like MetaMask was just like coming up, right? It wasn't really widely used yet, because I remember even at the end of 2017, when I was using a decentralized exchange, I believe it was EtherDelta. It was one of the first exchanges. And instead of connecting like your wallet to it, you had to paste your private key in the web browser application in order to get started. Like, it's crazy. Like, you guys are doing that nowadays. That's a red flag today. So it was then that we vouched, like, we need to come up with an environment that addresses all these things, like milestone-based financing, merit-based participation, or reputation-based participation in an environment that everyone understands, that's safe to use, that's transparent, and it's fun to use. And it actually helps projects to succeed instead of just helping them raise tons of money, because there is more than money to help a project succeed. Because if you look at what went wrong in the ICO boom, it was not because of a lack of money. It's because they had too much money and they didn't know how to use it properly. And I think that what happened back then when a project raised like 20 million in a day is that fact. That's why projects couldn't really succeed. Because if you look at a traditional startup, when they are raising funds, they are working really hard towards like this end goal of having this treasury that's really big, having a burn rate that they can manage for like the next couple of years. Like that's the dream of every founder that they're working towards to. But as a Web3 startup that's raising 20 million in a day, they already reached that goal. So there's nothing to work towards to anymore. Like if you really think about it, even if they consciously try to work really hard because they're just that kind of founder, which is completely fine and fair, and I'm sure it happened a lot, still unconsciously, they do not have that like this end goal in mind, well, that they have to work towards to. In the end, they're just building fun tech and doing, using their time in a fun way, which is not really the most productive way to spend your time. And that's what we've seen happening with all these projects.
I remember some of those companies raising 20 million in a day, like literally 20 million in a day. And then a couple months later, you hear that the founders bought themselves a Ferrari or a Lambo, or so like some of them kept their treasury in Ether when they raised at $1,500, and then 6 months later, Ethereum's $84, and their entire treasury is just evaporated, and things like this. So yeah, man, that was a wild time. How did you go about the solve for some of those issues? You mentioned milestone based, and obviously with smart contracts, that's something that you can do fairly well.
Exactly. So what we figured is that we need to create an all-in-one platform for retail to be able to participate in, and for so to get access to fundraising rounds of early stage projects, and for projects to have an environment where they are supported in more than just fundraising, also marketing, but also compliance. Because back then in 2018, we already saw the potential for compliant fundraising. We already saw like in the next few years, we will see some shifts in like the bigger markets, like the European Union, United States, when it comes to regulations in Web3. And And this is true. Like with MICA around the corner in the EU, we see a lot of regulatory frameworks popping up, including UAE, sometimes friendly, sometimes unfriendly, but a reality nonetheless. So we created this platform where KYC is at the forefront, where AML is on the forefront, and we focused on different stages of fundraising. So we have first the seed round, where projects typically raise a few $100K. They work on their MVP or releasable product. They make progress on their community and traction and stuff like that. And then a couple of months in, they can do a follow-up round for next tranche or at a higher valuation. So the community can invest again, and they can choose to invest based on the progress that the project has made between these two rounds. So it's the kind of milestone-based financing based on a different funding round, which is a more fair way to look at it, because in the first fundraising rounds, they don't raise 20 million at once. They usually raise like between 200 to 500K, which should be enough for the next months in order to develop a releasable product.
What are some of the things that you learnt from those initial, like working in a startup that wasn't your startup, but you're working in it, and then going and doing a startup in AllianceBlock, and then adding more things like funders, for example? How do you, if you're looking back now, and now really keen to talk about Nuklai as well, your most recent endeavor, but with funders and AllianceBlock still going in a new iteration, what are some of the things you think you look back and you've learned as a startup founder specifically? Many of our viewers and listeners are either founders themselves or aspire to be founders, and you've done this like actually a bunch of times now. How do you see your growth trajectory, I guess, and what are some of those lessons or milestones maybe for you that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that are very important for every founder. What I've learned, not just from myself, but I've also seen a lot of other founders on their journeys because of the fact that we help founders fundraise, right? And I think like the thing that's really common for me to see is the fact that most founders need to be flexible to pivot. Because I do really believe, from everything what I've seen and personally experienced, is that in most cases, the original idea, no matter how invested you are in this idea, no matter how good sounding this idea is, somewhere down the line you will pivot. The initial idea is never really the idea that you really end up with. Maybe there are some elements of your idea into it. Maybe it's completely 180 of what you originally thought of, or maybe it's like just a little bit different. But holding onto your idea for dear life, no matter what, will kill you. That's clear as night and day. So is that a factor of product market fit, or is that a factor of just your strategy and going to market, or is that a factor of iterating on your product? It's iterating. The world is changing fast, right? Regardless, the world of Web3 is changing even faster. Like there's like some people say like Web3 or life in crypto, it's like dog years, right? 1 year in crypto is like 7 years in the traditional world. It's kind of true. Things move at an incredible pace, and but regardless of that, the world is changing really fast anyway. And no matter how well you prepare for your product market fit and your go-to-market strategy and so on, 6 months in, and the world might look already a little bit different because of recent events, or just because the market is going in a different direction that you originally saw happening. And that can lead to a couple of things. You can make your product market fit even better, and then you need to just scale quicker, and you also need to be ready to pivot in order to accommodate this even bigger need for what you're doing. But it could also mean that you have to do something different because there is no product market fit anymore. You're obsolete or semi-obsolete because of whatever. And then you need to pivot even harder in order to make sure that you still have some relevance with what you're doing. And the secret is not avoiding these kind of situations, but expecting these kind of situations. Know that they're coming, and know that once they come, you have to be able to identify them and be able to be flexible enough to pivot and do something about it. Because every founder needs to have the quality of pivoting. I think that's like one of the most important qualities. If you can't handle the being flexible with what's happening around you, in the end, I do believe that you will fail.
Yeah, man, absolutely. How do you find? So you are a startup founder, but you're working a lot with founders as well, both in fundraising, but now also with Nuklai as well. How do you find you are like? How much of what you do is building? How much of what you do is coaching other people or like advising people how to build, or inputting into other people's products that are building on top of things that you have built? And is that something that you aspired to back in the day, or is that something that you've grown in, or is that just one of the realities of your job that you had to get good at?
So I think for the last part of your question, I think it's both. It's something that I aspired, always aspired, but also something that I grew into. It's something that I aspired in the sense like I always wanted to, be part of a building ecosystem, but I never really knew how exactly. Like I kind of have like this blurry vision of something that I wanted to accomplish at some point in my life, but I always had kind of the strategy, the personal strategy, to be open-minded of opportunities and see how things go. Seize the day, seize the moment, say yes to an opportunity now and see where it leads the next moment. So I always, had a lot of crazy new opportunities and teams to be part of, and challenges to do, which is what I love the most. And eventually I rolled into this kind of builders community, because Web3 is really builders community, just by being open-minded and reaching that stage of where like, okay, now it's like what I always wanted to do, I'm actually doing it now without realizing or purposely, doing that, going into that. And when it comes to your question around, how much time I'm really spending on building, I think it depends a bit on your definition of building. I believe that I'm always building, but building is also a very broad term, I think. Like for me, building is also bringing together the right people in order to help find those connections that would lead to something productive. And a big part of my time is being spent on connecting people, bringing them together, and discussing, new opportunities, finding ways to collaborate for them, with the aim to, find something, something tangible that will come out of it as a result, whether it's a product or a new startup or some kind of collaboration on business development or whatever. And through those connections, you're essentially contributing to have something being built without literally building these things yourself. I haven't been really active in software development anymore for a while, which is both, something that I'm a little bit sad about, because I really love doing that, but at the same time also a little bit happy about it, or more happy about it than I'm sad about it, I would say, because of the fact that I can spend more time on working on the bigger picture things and really build something that has impact, or help others build something that has impact.
That's really cool, man.
I agree.
Yeah. So how do you go from, AllianceBlock, funders, Nexera? What was the kind of genesis of the idea behind Nuklai?
Yeah, so Nuklai actually existed as an internal project, and inside of Nexera. Nexera is formerly AllianceBlock. It's been rebranded. And Nuklai was then known as the data tunnel. And it was a product that happened kind of on the side. It was always kept kind of smaller than the rest because it has a completely different narrative. And we tried to make it fit into the narrative, but it wasn't like a really DeFi or RWA tokenization product. It was really data AI driven technology. And once we realized that what we've built so far has more potential as a layer one, we also couldn't fit it in the tokenomics of Nexera anymore. So in late last year, late 2023, we've decided that we should spin off the data tunnel, do a rebranding, because data tunnel is, to be fair, it's a horrible name and very bad for SEO. I mean, it was cool, but it's very bad for SEO because data tunnel is very generic. So yeah, we decided to do a rebranding of the name, have a dedicated team for it, completely separated from Nexera, have its own go-to-market strategy, and just a proper spin-off. And so we did that in end of last year, and really put it on the map in early this year. And then we started to really get some decent traction, because suddenly having it outside of the Nexera branding really helped put focus on what Nuklai really stands for. So that was a very good decision in doing this, to keep Nexera really pure tokenization community play, and Nuklai really the data and AI play, in it more infrastructure focus.
So why does AI need, or data tunneling need, an L1? Why L1, not an L2 or an L3, or building on an existing L1 or L2? Why go for your own L1?
Yeah, it's funny because we didn't really realize this at first. We just started building on infrastructure that we believed that was necessary, that solves problems that really exist in the world when it comes to data. And data is really everywhere, right? I think there are many different formats, many different sources. It's completely siloed, and we wanted to make sure that it's easy to get access to the world's data. And so we started to build services around ingestion and transformation and query engines and stuff like that. And then we realized a big part of what we've built is depending on our centralized infrastructure. And the big vision that we're working towards is to be able to onboard the world's data and make that data available through the governance rules of the data providers, but to the rest of the world. And if we do that while depending on the centralized services that we've created, I don't think that we will be ever able to onboard all the world's data, because we then have control over the world's data. And I think no one wants a centralized entity or a single entity to have that much control over that vast amount of data. So it's just impossible. We have to, organically, there is this need to build a layer one specifically to accommodate those services, to decentralize it, so that all that data is owned by the network and not by a single participant of the network.
Why does AI need blockchain at all?
I don't think that AI necessarily needs blockchain, and there are certain areas of AI that can benefit from blockchain, and there are certain areas of AI where blockchain will just be very highly inefficient. And what AI does need is data, and how that data is being provided to AI, and how that data can be tracked to its origin and the original creator or contributor of that data, and how they are rewarded for the use of that data. That's what really matters. The AI model itself can be completely centralized, depending on the purpose of the model. It doesn't really matter. It could be an internal model, really boring, to help supply chain optimization of a large enterprise or a couple of enterprises collaborating. But how that data is being fed to the model and where it's coming from, that actually does matter. And having those tracking mechanisms on chain in a decentralized way without having the data itself on chain, that's where blockchain would be able to empower AI. So it's not really the AI itself necessarily that can enjoy decentralization, but it's like all the data as a foundation to make this AI model succeed. And I think that's still a very underrated part, because if we think about AIs nowadays, we think about LLMs, and we think about what we can do with LLMs already, forgetting about the fact that all this data has already been fed to this LLM, so we don't care about it anymore. But, in newer generations, in next iterations of generative AI, we need access to way more data, and it needs to be organized really well. And that we can see it's not organized really well at all right now. When New York Times is suing OpenAI for scraping their millions of articles, we see there is a problem. So it doesn't really matter about the AI and itself, but more about the data that's being fed to the AI.
So okay, then talk to me about data or data economies. How do they work on chain? How are you going to reward somebody for their data that's being used to create intelligence somewhere in an LLM, for example?
Yeah, so let me start with a really simple example. It's getting more and more common nowadays for people that drive a car, that need car insurance, to record how they drive the car. So how fast they accelerate, how they are braking, how they take corners, stuff like that. And then data. And no, I mean, if you record that data through your mobile phone, and then it senses that your mobile phone is being picked up while you're driving 100 miles an hour, there's something fishy going on, right? It's probably something that's very interesting to track. But yeah, I digress. This data can be used to calculate your premium for the month, right? If you drive really reckless, your premium goes up. If you drive really carefully, your premium goes down, something like that. So once that happens, that data, it reaches its purpose, right? The data is being used. You now know your premium for the month, and then the data can be thrown away, locked in silos, whatever. You don't really think about it anymore. But it's data that you've generated, and it's data that can have also purpose outside of this use case, maybe from another company where there's insurance, or just the automotive company itself, to learn more about the cars that they produce, how they're being driven, so that they can know in further optimizations of that model on how to improve. So they could say, for example, I want to buy access to that data that's being generated by the clients, this insurance company, in order to optimize these models. So then that money flows to the insurance company, but we need fair mechanisms on chain that can guarantee that if that money flows to that data, that money is distributed over those that generated the data, so the drivers. So having these kind of mechanisms on chain guarantee that this insurance company, which is somewhere in the middle, will not say, look, it's my data, I don't care who generated it, I will keep the money. If we plot these mechanisms on chain, we can guarantee that the drivers that generated the data for that one purpose, if it's also being used for another purpose, they will get money for it.
So using that example, actually, man, my mind's kind of exploding with different applications just for vehicles. That's amazing. But at the moment, it seems like we're giving away that data for free, right? So, Google, Apple Maps, they're collecting data on how we are driving already to then create intelligence that we use to determine how long it's going to take, to get to work in the morning, or to drive across town, or whatever, drop your kids off at soccer.
Absolutely.
How do we go from giving it away to data economy?
I mean, there will always be plenty amount of use cases where we will keep giving away your data for free willingly, if it allows you to use navigation software in ways that is extremely optimized. Why not? And many apps, especially Google and the larger apps, will also allow you to download this data, the data that you've generated, as to be GDPR compliant, for example. You will have the opportunity to download your own generated data inside of these apps, and then you can choose to resell your data out there and make it part of like a bigger data set of like-minded people, and pull it together. And then other startups or other companies can benefit from purchasing access to this data as well. So then it can form its own new data economy next to this big enterprise data economy that's managed by Google, where you can still be a part of and enjoy the free software and services, which can be potentially very beneficial for you, but still have this thriving data economy next to it.
Yeah, man, that's cool. So are you just building the infrastructure and then inviting people to build on top of it, these kinds of applications? Or are you also building some of those like tentpole or pilot applications as well?
Yeah, clearly we are also building pilot projects ourselves. We tend to focus more on the infrastructure. And because we are infrastructure that allows others to build on top of it, we have also built a really big ecosystem of builders and partners that all do something unique in our ecosystem, meaning that some, because if we look at really what we're building, it's to accommodate data, it's to onboard data, allow to collaborate on top of this data. But data is just data. And in order to really do something with it, give utility to the data, you're looking at, dashboarding, reporting, AI model training, and that's where our ecosystem comes into play. We have, for example, partners that provide distributed GPU power. So with an integration with their ecosystem and our ecosystem, the data that's on Nuklai can be really easily used to train an AI model on that distributed GPU integration. So we are looking for those kind of integrations, and we have this really big ecosystem. Like a year in, I think we've grown very massively with our ecosystem. And we're slowly onboarding new builders as well.
You mentioned the distributed compute power. Was that, did you go for distributed because it's better technology, or philosophically to kind of maintain that decentralized, philosophical priority, or why does it matter?
I think it's interesting because I would say like philosophically it makes sense and it's better, but it's simply more scalable and more cost efficient. So from when it comes to GPU power, having access to in a distributed way using idle compute resources from retail GPU owners, it makes total sense. It's a model that doesn't. It's super easy to explain, super easy to grasp. It was made for this, man. So it's not actually, you don't have to think about it from an ideological standpoint. It just is. It just works. It's just like it makes so much sense for this specific model.
Okay, so let's loop back to that car example again. What's missing to make that a reality right now? Do we just need APIs into some sort of IoT in the cars? Do we need oracles? What do we need to make that a reality?
I think...
Is it just a matter of time, or are there technologies that need to be developed?
No. Technology-wise, we're already there. We already have devices that generate this data. We have deep-in projects that have access to these devices. And we have traceability mechanisms and verification mechanisms to ensure that the data is correct and hasn't been meddled with somewhere in the middle, right? That someone didn't get access to the data and downplayed all the speed variables or whatever. So we all these mechanisms are in play, and some of use cases similar to this already exist and already working. Like the full end-to-end use case can technically be done, but it's also depending on those that want to buy the data. So for us, we did a lot of effort building our Web3 ecosystem with Web3 partners, and we are now focusing more and more on the Web2 ecosystem and Web2 partners or clients that actually want to purchase that data that's generated through our ecosystem, that exists or thrives in our ecosystem. So actually real world consumers of those types of data.
Yeah. Is there a way to, let's think about the average blockchain person or crypto person is probably more concerned with privacy and security than the average person. How are we thinking about, privacy when it comes to data and data sharing? Are you thinking about like zero knowledge or some sort of abstraction of the data, or is the connection to the user actually a vital part where we can't abstract it? They need to know the particulars about each individual person. And again, just using that one example, with the where they're going and how they're using it, or as a way to say, you just get a green checkbox to say, yes, you've driven well. Well done.
Yeah, so it's actually it's a very important topic, and it's a very sensitive topic when it comes to Web3 and the Web3 community. Our main focus is to focus on the data that matters. And that's just like the vehicle data, the raw, boring data points, the numbers and the ranges and the points that don't really say anything about the user. Users can be abstracted away by having some random generated ID that cannot be traced back to the user. So the use cases that we focus on, it doesn't really matter who the user is. It matters what kind of data we can find about the vehicle or IoT device or whatever. We don't care about any personal data. I think most use cases around personal data are used for fingerprinting, which is more for marketing purposes, outside of maybe healthcare. So we really focus more on the business side of data and not the personal side.
Yeah. What are some of the other things that you're hoping people build on top of Nuklai? You mentioned healthcare, things like defense, all kinds of different kinds of data plays. What are you hoping comes about in the next, let's say, 18 months?
Yeah, that's actually really funny. So my answer would be healthcare and defense.
Oh, right. Okay. I mean,
we have already.
They seem so, naturally kind of applicable to what you're building. So that's why they came to mind, to me at least.
Exactly. So from a dream perspective, I would say defense is a really cool opportunity because data sharing is extremely important. It needs to be extremely accurate. It needs to be secure, and there is a lot of different entities, government entities that are involved in this data sharing between, the ships and airplanes, or it's different data sharing levels. And the use cases for us are extremely interesting there, but we also have to be realistic in the sense that we are a startup right now that still have a lot to prove from the security of our infrastructure, the scalability, robustness, and everything. And to be focusing on something as huge as defense of a country, it's pretty big. It's pretty ambitious. But we do. Yeah, exactly. But we do see a lot of opportunity in government in general, government or semi-government, especially in areas where government bodies are opening up their data, in the sense that more and more governments out there are deciding to make their data publicly available for the good of businesses, small businesses. So they start to build this kind of data sharing platforms where people can download, the public data and make it available as easy as possible. But it's still download the CSV file of this, download the CSV file of that, and if you want to join them together, you have to join them on these fields, and it's kind of a hassle to do that. And our infrastructure is extremely easy and cheap for those kind of initiatives to just onboard this data on one go on Nuklai. And then this data can be used by data scientists, developers, whatever, to have a really easy access to the data without meddling around. So it will be a win for the data consumers and the government bodies. So this is something definitely that I'm targeting in the first half of next year.
So is this going to be government agencies coming and building, or is this going to be private sector people who are building government kind of applications or healthcare applications or defense applications and then going to the government saying, hey, this is going to be super helpful for you?
The use cases are extreme. There's so much potential. There's so much possible with government data. It can be as easy as for a realtor developer or a real estate developer to decide where best to build the next tower, or how, in which area for a restaurant is it the easiest to get a new license in a certain area. Like the government data is around these kind of mundane things, but are very important for business decisions. So it can be for startups that build, services on top of that data that can benefit small and medium, large businesses inside of a country.
That sounds awesome, actually. How do you then win the race to? I mean, chain abstraction and interoperability have been kind of buzzwords in recent months. How are you thinking about that and just the competition with? I mean, AI is very big in the meta at the moment. Still, even has been for the last 18 months or so, and obviously AI is not going anywhere and only growing, and so there are more and more people trying to do the same or similar kinds of things, or at least play in the same pond. How are you thinking about that in terms of competition, partnership, interoperability, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think for us, sometimes someone shares like a new company or startup with me, and they're like, "Wow, are those your competitors?" And I'm always thinking like, how could we work together with them? Because I think when we want to solve the world's data problems, we cannot do it alone. So that's why we'd rather build an ecosystem than we compete with others. And with some projects, it's a little bit easier said than done. But I think it's a healthier approach and a necessary approach when it comes to building really a next generation of AI or working towards AGI. We do need to collaborate more. And so for us, even with competitors, we aim to find a way to strengthen each other, empowering each other with what we do, in for the better of the AI industry, for the better of having access to more reliable data, etc. I think it's beneficial for everyone in the end.
Yeah, man. So what's your pitch to, say, a startup founder or even a developer who's thinking, man, I need to do something. The AI blockchain bull run is going nuts at the moment. Got to get in on this action. What's your 30-second pitch for someone to come and build on Nuklai?
Well, it doesn't matter what kind of innovation you're going to build, whether it's AI or any kind of innovation that's going to be a service to others. You will need access to high quality data, and then it's a pain if you have to combine different set of APIs, different set of data sources to bring this together and in a generic way for your single application. Nuklai makes it super easy for you to get access to all of that data in one or a few clicks, while you can write queries to CSV files at a MongoDB at the same time.
Easy peasy. And I saw recently you've announced a Launchpad to help people who do want to build to actually be able to launch really well. Tell us a little bit about the Launchpad.
Yes, actually, it came really organically. It wasn't planned from the beginning, but we do see like a lot of layer ones have their own Launchpad because they meet a lot of builders that are launching their own token and need help fundraising and need help growing the community, etc. So also with Nuklai, we've seen a lot of partners that become part of our ecosystem, but they're also launching their own token in the near future. And of course, we have the Nexera launch platform, formerly known as Funders, which accommodate a lot of project fundraising as well, but it's focusing really on the early stage projects. So like seed, pre-seed even, these kind of sales rounds. And if we see a lot of projects, more around the IDO stage or just pre-IDO, we had to say no to them. And I think in Nuklai, we can have the opportunity to build a launchpad very quickly using the Nexera technology and accommodate these later stage projects in the data and AI sectors in Web3 and help them launch their token to have like a solution next to the Nexera launchpad.
Alrighty. Well, man, I'm looking forward to hearing more about Nuklai as you continue to build and launch. Before you go though, I'm keen to hear what are your, coming into 2025, what are your maybe 3 big predictions across, let's say, all of AI and data, but specifically Web3. We saw Bitcoin 100K-ish, close enough to call. What else do you think we're going to see into 2025?
I think Bitcoin still has some room to grow in 25. I don't think much more. I'm not like 200K believer or even 150K believer. But there is definitely some room. But I think the market also realized that a lot of money that's flown into Bitcoin is to flow into the rest of the market. I'm a little bit hesitant to say that the whole altcoin market will do really well at once. I really believe that since we've seen so much projects, added to the industry in the past couple of years, in bad years, that it becomes too big to rally all at once. So it will be narrative cycles. And we've seen this already, like a meme cycle, AI cycle, RWA cycle, layer 2 cycle, and we will see this over and over. And there could be a couple of cycles rallying at once. But I really don't believe we see them all at once. Maybe like tiny bits in general when there is like a big relief of the market, but AI will then run harder than RWAs or the other way around. And I think from now on, we're at this point where we will see this, especially in 2025, we will see this really, really strongly. What my hope is for 25, outside of all the AI developments, I hope that RWAs will get really, they're going to be taken very seriously because it's like for the future of Web3. It ensures a more sustainable future for Web3 because it's based on real world assets instead of what we saw in the DeFi summer, where all the yield is not sustainable. Like when you don't know where the yield is coming from, you are the yield, right? And with RWAs, you know where the yield is coming from. And for AI, for me, I believe that OpenAI will come with a massive surprise somewhere next year, whether it's on the API or the intelligence of the model or something. And it will come with a new wave of builders and hype, which will also trickle into the Web3 AI narrative again, of course.
All right. And what I'd like to ask all of my guests is, what is your biggest, or at least the contrarian view you most like to talk about, where everybody seems to be thinking one way, but you think, I don't think that's a thing, and everyone is expecting something to happen and you're expecting it to not happen, or vice versa. Do you have any particular, doesn't have to be controversial, just where should we be looking that nobody else is looking?
Well, I don't know where we should be looking where no one else is looking, but I do believe, like, I've always been a person that's anti-meme. So I never saw like, the importance of memes in Web3. And I always thought like they're a disease for those that want to build hard. And sometimes it's really unfair to see, you're struggling yourself. And then you see like a meme coin, which is just a pretty picture of a frog going to like a couple billion market cap. And you're like, okay, what am I really doing with my life? But I'm starting to turn around slightly, even though I don't buy meme coins myself. I don't really care much about them. I do see the importance of meme coins in the industry. It does give a sense of belonging. I think the lack of utility does matter for some people, and we need those kind of people in the industry as well. And we need them also for the utility projects out there, and they will come eventually. But I think like this kind of meme cycles that will, come and go with peaks and downs, are going to be more and more important for the industry to keep the money flowing into it. If certain narratives are not as exciting as other times, so I'm starting to embrace, this feeling and these thoughts a little bit more than before. And I think, the only thing that doesn't really help when we see like with pump.fun, with this live stream to people, threaten things with shotguns or hanging themselves, like that's really shit. That's really bad. And I absolutely do not condone this. And we do need to get rid of these kind of things. But I know as a community together, we can work together in order to mature this a little bit more, put some guardrails on, and to make memes a little bit safer and more fun, so to attract like a new wave of people into the industry.
Yeah, man. Matthijs, if someone wants to find out more about Nexera or about Nuklai or hear more from you, where can they find you online?
The best is on Twitter. Get started there. On our or X, I should say. Sorry, and our X is Nuklai Data. And our handle is Nuklai Data. So that's NUKLAI and then data as one word.
Alrighty, we'll chuck all that in the show notes as well. Thanks heaps for joining us on the show today. Looking forward to I'm going to like to have you back sometime in the middle of next year, hear about how you're coming along and what kind of good gear and how those builders who are building on top of Nuklai, what kind of success they're having as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me today. And for everyone that's listening, I hope you will have an amazing rest of your days. It was fantastic to be here.
Good on you. I should also ask one more thing. The beard, is this just genetics or, using some sort of make it look so glorious or?
I have very good hair genetics. Yeah, I'm blessed with also there's no balding or gray hairs.
Just blessed and nearly 40. Karaki.
Yes, exactly. So I'm very lucky with that. I'm not lucky with some things, but with that I was very lucky.
Alrighty. All right. Well, we'll catch you very soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thanks for joining us again today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Off-Chain Podcast. We love bringing you great guests like Matthijs, helping you understand and think about Web3, about technology, about the future, and how you can be a part of building it. As always, please like, subscribe, or better yet, share this episode with a friend and help us spread the word. And join us again next week for another great episode of Off-Chain. Until then, take care.